The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Jeff Dudas from underwatertimes.com.
So we'll talk with Jeff Dudas instead, underwatertimes.com, joining us from Miami today. Hello to you, Jeff.
How you doing, Wammo?
Very well, thanks. And first story today involves a groper and a PVC pipe.
It's a big groper too. We call them groupers here, but a groper has sort of another meaning, and maybe on this side of the pond.
Are we talking about the same fish then?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll go with groper.
Okay.
Evidently, this giant groper was comes out of Cairns in Australia. It was in this tank, and this PVC pipe came dislodged. It was a big pipe. It was about the size, I guess, maybe a forearm. It's about 35 centimeter pipe came dislodged, and the groper came up, thought it was a squid, and just swallowed it whole. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with these fish. They have giant mouths. They're big fish.
Tasty fish.
Sorry?
They're tasty fish.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So it swallowed it whole, and it got stuck in its stomach, as you would expect if a big fish swallowed a big pipe. So they decided they were going to have to operate on this fish, and they brought in vets, and they lowered. It was in this giant tank, so they lowered the water, gave this fish some sedatives, but they only could keep it out of the water for 4 minutes. So it was literally life and death. They had to start the timer.
Wow.
To get this pipe out. And so they lowered the tank, gave it a sedative, pried open its jaws, and they had to use these, these giant retractors, because these teeth are really sharp teeth. So pried open its jaws, and the vet stuck his hand down the fish's jaw into its stomach and pulled out this pipe. Evidently, they had 30 seconds to go, so it took like 3.5 minutes, and quickly got the fish back into the water, and it survived.
And it survived at the end. Gosh. That's amazing, isn't it? A very brave vet.
Yeah, I don't know about. They've done this now a couple times where they've done this with sharks too, where they have like a giant hook or something in its mouth, where they have to pry open its jaws and sedate them for a few minutes, and so this is becoming, I guess, more and more common now.
Yeah, and the PVC pipe. Did they work out where that came from?
It came from the tank. They evidently was like a return for water. And it became dislodged and just sort of flung into the tank.
Interesting. All right, second story about cuttlefish and seahorses.
A couple first, and this comes from Spain. These researchers went down into the seagrass studying the European cuttlefish, and a cuttlefish is sort of like a squid. It's it has these little tentacles and changes colors and such. And so they were studying these. And they filmed them laying eggs, which was evidently a first. No one else had filmed these European cuttlefish laying eggs. And normally, cuttlefish, they lay eggs on the little seagrass growing, so they get water going across them and such. And evidently, perfect place for a cuttlefish to lay eggs. And so they were down there, and then they came across a seahorse, which had cuttlefish eggs attached to it, which that in and of itself was a little unusual. They had never seen this before, and evidently this, the seagrass is also the habitat for a seahorse. Yeah. And it in clear water, for some reason, this cuttlefish deposited its eggs on the seahorse. Huh. Which they'd again never seen before. Yeah. And they decided with that they couldn't. The seahorse was sort of struggling. So they decided to rescue the seahorse, and they ripped off the eggs from the seahorse. Yeah, yeah. And the eggs didn't survive. So the seahorse survived, but the eggs didn't.
So the eggs are big enough for the seahorse to struggle with them.
Yeah, they're actually they're probably as big as about your finger. I've seen these before. They're sort of a sack, and probably maybe size of your pinky finger or such.
I wonder if there was some kind of purpose for laying the eggs on the seahorse. Was the cuttlefish hoping the seahorse would carry them away somewhere?
Well, that's sort of the question. This had never been seen before, and they think maybe just the seahorse was hanging out, just sit. They sort of grab onto the seagrass with their tail, as the current's going by. Maybe it was just sitting there, and for one reason or another, the cuttlefish thought it was a good place to put its eggs.
Cuttlefish thought the seahorse was a pack horse.
I don't know. That's well, it didn't turn out too well for the cuttlefish egg.
No, it didn't. Hey, Jeff, the first story we were just talking about the groper and the fact that the vet could only have it out of water for 4 minutes while he was doing the surgery.
Yes.
But and of course, obviously, because it'll die if it was out any longer. But that's not necessarily the rule, especially when it comes to goldfish.
Well, evidently, this you can keep a goldfish out of water for quite some time. This is a story out of London. A lady came upon her goldfish. It was a several-year-old goldfish, been around for a while. She comes up to it and sees it floating on the top of its tank. And I think anybody that's ever owned fish had faced this. So she grabbed the fish and wrapped it up in some paper, stuck it in her bathtub, just at the bottom of the tub. Said she'd come back to it later in the day, and went out shopping. 7 hours later, comes back, and they decide they're going to bury the fish in the backyard. She goes and picks up the fish, and it starts wiggling.
Huh.
And she screamed and yelled, didn't know what was going on, and so they took it to the sink, and they filled the sink up with water, and the fish sort of slowly came back to life.
Wow.
7 hours outside. And they put it back in its tank, and evidently no worse for the wear.
You'd think it would be well down that tunnel of light by then, It would have seen the gates.
You would think it'd be very, very dim light in that tunnel, but this fish maybe had a couple lives to it. Because
now, sometimes goldfish can float to the surface, but they're not necessarily dead, are they? They're just full of air or something?
Yeah, evidently, maybe it's a lesson. Make sure your goldfish is dead before... The lady was thinking about flushing it, and she says, she's thankful for not flushing it down the toilet, but it survived.
They reckon that's a bad thing to do, flushing down the toilet anyway, because these fish turn into carp. These goldfish turn into carp, and they end up in waterways.
Yeah, there you go, and they turn into cartoon stories too.
Yeah,
so.
They do too. Jeff, thanks so much. All those stories you'll find up at underwatertimes.com, and of course a whole lot more up there as well. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks, Jeff. And time now is 26 minutes past 7.